The transport shuttle shuddered as it docked with Zenith Station. Dr. Brooks pressed his face against the viewport, watching the massive medical facility grow larger. The station was enormous, bigger than any human structure he had ever seen. Its silver surface gleamed under the light of 3 distant suns. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different species came and went like busy insects around a hive. Took a deep breath. This was it. 6 years of training, 2 years of waiting for approval, and countless interviews had led to this moment. He was the first human emergency physician to join the Galactic Health Consortium's medical exchange program. The weight of that responsibility sat heavy on his shoulders. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic clang, grabbed his 2 bags and headed for the airlock. Everything he owned for the next 3 years fit into those bags. He had left behind his apartment in Seattle, his friends, and his comfortable position at Harbor Medical Center. But he had also left behind the routine, the predictability, and the feeling that he had stopped growing as a doctor. The airlock cycled open, stepped into a corridor that stretched far in both directions. The walls were a pale blue color that seemed to glow from within. Aliens of various species walked past him without a second glance. Some had 4 arms, others had scales or fur, and a few looked almost human except for their unusual skin colors or extra eyes. Had studied xenobiology for 2 years, but seeing so many different species in person was overwhelming. Dr. Brooks turned to see a tall, slender alien approaching. Her skin was a light purple color, and she had large, dark eyes that took up much of her narrow face. She wore a white medical coat with symbols he recognized as medical insignia. "Yes, that's me," said, extending his hand. The alien looked at his hand with curiosity, but did not take it. "I am Chief Physician Aura. I will show you to your quarters and then give you a tour of our facilities." Lowered his hand, making a mental note. No handshakes with, "Thank you, I'm honored to be here." Aura turned and began walking at a brisk pace. Hurried to keep up, his bags bouncing against his legs. "You will begin observing our procedures tomorrow," Aura said. "We do not expect you to treat patients immediately. You must first learn our protocols and methods." "Of course," replied. "I'm here to learn as much as to share." Aura glanced at him. "Your species has interesting medical knowledge, we are told, but your technology is far behind ours. We will see what you can contribute." Bit back a defensive response. He had been warned that many alien species viewed humans as primitives. Earth had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago. Compared to civilizations that had been exploring space for thousands of years, humanity was barely crawling. They reached his quarters after a long walk through winding corridors. The room was small but functional. A bed, a desk, a small bathroom, and a window that looked out at the stars. Set down his bags and followed Aura back out for the tour. The medical wing was impressive. The operating rooms had equipment that seemed to float in the air, held by some kind of anti-gravity field. Diagnostic machines scanned patients without touching them. Recovery rooms were lined with beds, each surrounded by displays showing vital signs in languages did not yet understand. What struck most was the silence. In human hospitals, there was always noise. Machines beeped, people talked, patients groaned or cried out. Here, everything was quiet and efficient. The patients lay still in their beds, their faces blank. Aura led him to an observation deck above one of the surgical theaters. Below, a team of doctors worked on a small patient. Leaned forward, his medical training kicking in automatically. The patient was a child, maybe 7 years old by human standards, though it was hard to tell with alien species. The child belonged to a species with gray skin and 4 arms. The surgical team was repairing what looked like a damaged organ. Watched the precise movements, the advanced tools, the seamless coordination. Then he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The child was awake. Its eyes were open, tracking the movements of the doctors. Its small body trembled. "Why isn't the patient sedated?" asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "The patient must remain conscious to provide feedback during the procedure," Aura explained. "We use neural inhibitors to prevent excessive movement, but the patient needs to tell us if we are damaging surrounding tissue." "But the pain," said, "that child is in pain." Aura tilted her head. "Pain is a diagnostic signal. It tells us what we need to know. The child will be given suppressants after the surgery is complete." Watched as the child's small hands clenched and unclenched. He could see the terror in its eyes, the way its breathing quickened. Every instinct he had as a doctor screamed at him to intervene, to demand they stop and provide proper anesthesia. But he was a guest here, an observer. He had no authority to challenge their methods on his first day. The surgery continued for another hour, forced himself to watch to learn even as his stomach churned. When it was finally over, the child was moved to a recovery room. No parent came to sit beside the bed. No nurse stayed to hold its hand. The child lay alone, suffering through the aftermath of surgery in silence. That evening, met Dr. Lisa in the station's human section, a small area set aside for the handful of humans on board. Lisa was a trauma surgeon who had arrived 4 months earlier. She was younger than, with short black hair and tired eyes. "Welcome to Zenith Station," Lisa said, pouring a cup of coffee from Earth. "How was your first day?" "Difficult," admitted. He told her about the surgery he had witnessed. Lisa nodded. "I know. I had the same reaction when I first arrived. I tried to talk to them about pain management, about the psychological trauma they're causing. They listened politely and then ignored everything I said." "There has to be a way to get through to them," said. "Good luck," Lisa replied. "These species have been practicing medicine for thousands of years. They see our concerns as emotional weakness. To them, pain is just data, nothing more." Sipped his coffee, thinking about the child lying alone in that recovery room. Pain is never just data, it's an experience. It affects healing, creates trauma, changes how the body responds to treatment. "I know that, you know that, but they don't see it that way." Lisa set down her cup. "Just be careful, don't push too hard too fast. You can't change their entire medical philosophy in a day." Nodded, but he was already thinking about the research he had brought with him. Studies on pain management, data on recovery outcomes, evidence that compassion was not just kindness but medicine itself. He went to bed that night in his small quarters, looking out at the unfamiliar stars. He thought about why he had really come here. Yes, he wanted to learn from alien medicine, but he also wanted to teach. He wanted to show them that humanity had something valuable to offer, something that had nothing to do with advanced technology. He wanted to show them that caring for a patient's suffering was not weakness. It was strength. It was the very foundation of healing. His first week in the emergency ward taught him that the divide between human and alien medicine was even deeper than he had imagined. He watched dozens of procedures, treated minor cases under supervision, and spent hours studying the medical protocols that governed Zenith Station. The alien doctors were brilliant. Their diagnostic tools could identify problems that would take human doctors days to find. Their surgical techniques were precise beyond anything Earth had achieved. They could repair damage that would be permanent disabilities in human medicine. But they did all of this while their patients suffered. On his 5th day, was assigned to assist with incoming emergency cases. He worked alongside Ara and a team of nurses. The first patient was a mining accident victim, with crushed legs. The creature howled in pain as they moved it onto the examination table. "Neural inhibitor," Ara ordered. A nurse applied a device to the patient's neck. The stopped moving but could see the pain still burning in its eyes. The inhibitor only controlled movement, not sensation. "Shouldn't we give something for the pain?" asked carefully. "The inhibitor is sufficient," Ara replied, already scanning the injuries. "We need the pain response intact for diagnosis. The patient will tell us where the damage is worst." Bit his tongue and assisted with the scan. The could not move, could not even cry out anymore, but its eyes begged for relief. Had never felt more helpless as a doctor. After the shift, Ara called a staff meeting. All the medical personnel gathered in a conference room, recognized most of the faces by now. There were, and a few other species he was still learning to identify. "Dr. Brooks has requested time to present some information about human medical practices," Ara announced. "We will listen with open minds." Stood up, his tablet in hand. He had prepared carefully for this moment. "Thank you for this opportunity. I want to share some research from human medicine about pain management and its effects on recovery." He brought up his first chart, showing comparative recovery times between patients who received pain management and those who did not. "These studies show that patients who have their pain properly controlled heal faster. They have fewer complications, lower infection rates, and better long-term outcomes." A doctor raised one of his 4 hands. "Your data comes from human patients only. Our species are different. We do not experience pain the same way." "That's true," acknowledged. But pain is a universal biological response. It triggers stress hormones, suppresses immune function, and creates psychological trauma regardless of species. The mechanisms might differ, but the effects are similar. He showed more charts, more data, everything he had brought from Earth. He talked about how untreated pain affected healing at the cellular level, how stress responses complicated recovery, how trauma could last long after physical wounds healed. The alien doctors listened politely. When finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Ara spoke. "Your research is interesting, Dr. Brooks, but our methods have been refined over thousands of years. We appreciate your input, but we must respectfully decline to change our protocols based on research from a single species that has barely begun to explore the galaxy." Felt his face flush, but he kept his voice steady. "I understand. Thank you for listening." The meeting ended. As the other doctors filed out, gathered his materials, Lisa appeared at his side. "I told you," she said quietly. "They won't change their minds because of data." "Then we'll have to show them another way," replied. Over the next few days, tried a different approach. He could not change the protocols, but he could add to them. When he treated patients, he did not just repair their injuries. He talked to them. He explained what he was doing and why. He offered reassurance and comfort. Most alien patients found this strange. They were not used to doctors who spoke to them beyond giving orders or asking diagnostic questions, but kept doing it anyway. One afternoon, a young technician named In was brought in with severe burns from an engine room accident. The burns covered his arms and part of his chest. Could smell the burnt flesh before he even reached the examination table. Ara took charge of the case. She ordered the standard treatment, rapid tissue regeneration with minimal pain suppressants. In lay on the table, his purple skin blackened and peeling, his breath coming in short gasps. "I will endure," In said through clenched teeth. "I am strong." Prepared the regeneration equipment as ordered, but instead of staying silent, he pulled a stool up beside In's head. "You are strong," agreed. "But strength isn't just about enduring pain, it's also about healing well." In looked at him with confusion. "I do not understand." "Let me talk you through this," said. "I'm going to explain everything I'm doing. You can ask questions. You can tell me how you're feeling. You don't have to suffer in silence." Ara glanced at but said nothing. She continued her work while began the treatment. "Right now, I'm applying a cellular regenerator to your left arm," explained. "You'll feel a tingling sensation, then some pressure. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it means the healthy tissue is growing back." In nodded slightly. Continued talking, describing each step in calm, simple language. He told In what to expect when the pain would spike, when it would ease. He asked how In was doing, if he needed a moment to breathe, if the pain was manageable. The procedure took 2 hours. When it was over, In's burns were healed, though the new skin would need time to fully strengthen. Checked the bandages one last time. "Why did you do that?" In asked. "Do what?" "Talk to me through the whole procedure. Explain everything. No doctor has ever done that before." Smiled, "Because you deserve to know what was happening to your own body, and because sometimes just knowing what's coming makes it easier to bear." In was quiet for a moment. "It did help. I was less afraid when you explained things. The pain was the same, but somehow it felt different. Smaller, maybe." "That's exactly right," said. "Knowledge and presence can't eliminate pain, but they can change how we experience it." After In was moved to recovery, Ara approached. "Your method was inefficient. The procedure took longer because of your talking." "It took 10 minutes longer," corrected gently. "But In was calmer, more cooperative, and less traumatized. That will speed his overall recovery." Ara considered this. "Perhaps I will observe the results." That evening, met with the small human support staff that worked on the station. There was Palmer, a nurse from Boston, and Sharon Davis, a medical technician from Texas. They gathered in the human section to share a meal. "I heard what you did with In today," said. "The nurses were talking about it. They thought it was strange, but also interesting." "Strange is better than nothing," replied. "At least they noticed." Sharon poured herself some water. "I've been here 8 months, and I've wanted to scream every single day. Watching patients suffer for no good reason, knowing we could help them, but being told it's not the protocol. It wears you down." "I know," said, "but we can't give up. We have to keep showing them that there's another way." "Will they ever listen?" asked. Thought about In's words, about how the pain felt smaller when someone was there with him. I think they will, not because of our data or our arguments, but because they'll see the results. We just have to be patient and keep demonstrating what compassionate care looks like. The alarm blared through the station before anyone could respond. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The intercom crackled to life with an urgent message in several languages. Medical emergency, all personnel to emergency stations. Major accident in Industrial Sector 7. Mass casualties expected. Was on his feet immediately, along with and Sharon. They ran toward the emergency ward, transformed into controlled chaos within minutes. Injured workers poured in from the industrial sector, where a pressure containment system had failed catastrophically. The explosion had sent shrapnel through 3 levels of the station, catching dozens of workers in the blast. Moved from patient to patient, doing rapid triage. With a punctured lung, and with severe lacerations across its thorax. With crush injuries to both legs. The alien medical teams worked with impressive speed, diagnosing and treating with practiced efficiency. But the sounds were terrible. Without proper pain management, the injured workers cried out, groaned, and thrashed against their restraints. The neural inhibitors kept them from moving too much, but did nothing for their agony. The ward filled with the noise of suffering. Worked alongside a surgical team on a critical case. The patient had internal bleeding and needed immediate intervention. They worked quickly, their hands moving in perfect coordination. Assisted, passing instruments and monitoring vital signs. Across the ward, he could see and Sharon moving between patients. They were doing more than just treating injuries. They held hands, offered words of comfort, wiped away tears. The alien medical staff focused only on the physical damage, leaving the humans to provide what they saw as unnecessary emotional support. After 3 hours, the initial wave of critical patients had been stabilized, was checking on a recovering patient when the doors burst open again. 2 medics carried in a human on a stretcher. His heart sank as he recognized the uniform, a cargo ship captain. Greg Mitchell, human, 43 years old, one medic reported. Multiple fractures, suspected internal bleeding, severe trauma to the abdomen. Rushed over, Greg was conscious but in obvious pain. His face was pale and covered in sweat. Blood soaked through his uniform. "Hey, Doc," Greg managed through gritted teeth. "This is bad, isn't it?" "We're going to take care of you," promised. "Just hold on." Aura appeared at side, already scanning Greg with a diagnostic device. "Severe internal injuries. He needs immediate surgery. Prepare the operating theater." "I'll assist," said. They moved Greg to the surgical theater quickly. The team assembled around the table while scrubbed in. Greg was transferred to the operating surface, the advanced restraints holding him in place. "Beginning procedure," Aura announced. "Neural inhibitor applied. Patient will remain conscious for diagnostic feedback." Froze. "Wait, we need to put him under general anesthesia." Aura looked at him. "Our protocol requires conscious patients for abdominal surgery. We need his feedback to avoid damaging organs." "He's human," said firmly. "I know human physiology better than anyone here. We have monitoring equipment that can give you the same feedback without keeping him awake and in pain." "This is not your decision, Dr. Brooks," Aura replied. "You are an observer here, not the chief physician." Looked down at Greg, who was watching the exchange with growing fear. Then looked at the other doctors in the room. They were all waiting to see what would happen. "With respect, Chief Physician, he is my patient. He's human, and I'm the human medicine specialist on this station. I'm asking you to trust me on this." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Aura studied for a long moment. "What do you propose?" Moved to a storage cabinet and pulled out equipment he had brought from Earth. "These neural monitors can track pain responses, muscle tension, and organ stress without requiring the patient to be conscious. I can interpret the readings and give you the feedback you need." Aura examined the equipment. "This technology is primitive compared to our systems." "But it works," insisted. "And it means we can give him proper anesthesia. Please, let me show you that there's another way to do this." Aura was quiet for what felt like an eternity. The other doctors watched, waiting for her decision. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, we will try your method, but if there are any complications, we switch to our protocol immediately." "Agreed," said. He quickly set up the monitoring equipment, attaching sensors to Greg's body. The anesthesiologist, a named N, looked uncertain. I have never administered full sedation for this type of surgery. I'll guide you, said. Human physiology is different from, but the principles are similar. Together, they prepared the anesthesia, explained the dosages, the timing, and the monitoring they would need. Greg gripped his hand before he went under. Thanks, Doc, Greg whispered. Sleep well, replied. When you wake up, this will all be over. The anesthesia took effect, and Greg's eyes closed. His body relaxed. The monitors had set up began feeding data to the displays above the operating table. Ara made the first incision, watched the monitors carefully, calling out readings that corresponded to what Ara needed to know. Muscle tension increasing near the lower left quadrant, possible damaged tissue there. Ara adjusted her approach, finding the bleeding that monitors had indicated. Your equipment is crude but functional, she admitted. The surgery continued for nearly 2 hours. Interpreted the monitor readings, guiding Ara through the procedure without Greg ever regaining consciousness. The other doctors in the room watched with clear interest. This was something new, a different approach that actually seemed to work. When the surgery was complete, Greg was moved to recovery. He would wake up without the trauma of having experienced his own surgery, without the memory of pain and helplessness. Stepped out of the surgical theater exhausted, he found Sharon in the hallway. How are things in the main ward? He asked. Stable, Sharon reported. All the critical patients are out of danger, but there are still about 20 people in recovery, and most of them are in pretty bad pain. Nodded, let's see what we can do about that. They moved through the recovery ward systematically. Most patients were aliens who had been treated according to standard protocols. They lay in their beds, enduring their pain with stoic silence or quiet moans. Approached a young worker who clutched his bandaged arm. I'm Dr. Brooks. I'd like to help with your pain if you'll let me. The looked surprised. The surgery is complete. Pain is expected during recovery. It doesn't have to be, said gently. I have medication that can reduce your pain significantly without affecting your healing. Would you like to try it? The hesitated, clearly uncertain. My people believe that enduring pain builds strength. I respect that belief, said. But I also believe that unnecessary suffering doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you hurt. The choice is yours. After a moment, the nodded, administered a pain reliever, adjusting the dosage for physiology based on his training. Within minutes, the worker's face relaxed. The tight grip on his arm loosened. Better, asked. Yes, the admitted, sounding surprised. Much better. I can think more clearly now. The pain was so loud in my mind before. Moved to the next bed and the next, offering relief to those who would accept it. Some refused, clinging to their cultural beliefs about pain and strength. Respected their choices, but he did not leave them alone. He sat with them anyway, talking them through the worst moments, helping them breathe, offering presence even when they refused medication. In one bed, he found an elderly named who had severe injuries from falling debris. The old worker refused all pain medication, determined to face his suffering with traditional dignity. Did not argue. Instead, he pulled up a chair. Tell me about your work, said. Looked at him with confusion. Why? Because I want to know, and because talking sometimes helps with pain. So talked. He spoke about his 40 years working in the industrial sectors, about the young workers he had trained, about the pride he took in his craft. Listened, asking questions, showing genuine interest. When the pain grew too intense for to speak, talked instead, sharing stories from Earth, describing human medicine, offering distraction. Hours passed. The ward slowly grew quieter as exhaustion claimed the patients. Continued his rounds, never rushing, never treating the injured as just cases to be processed. Ara watched from the observation deck above. She had been observing and the human staff for the past hour. What she saw confused her. The humans were spending enormous amounts of time with patients who were already medically stable. They were holding hands, talking, even singing in one case when Sharon tried to comfort a frightened child. It was inefficient. It was unnecessary. It made no logical sense. But Ara could not deny what the monitors showed. The patients who received this human treatment had lower stress indicators, more stable vital signs, and better responsiveness. The data was undeniable, even if the reasons behind it made no sense to her. She descended to the ward floor and approached, who was checking on Greg. The human captain was still sleeping peacefully, his vital signs strong. "Your patient is recovering well," Ara observed. "He is," agreed. "Thank you for letting me try my approach." "The results are acceptable," Ara said carefully. "But I do not understand why your methods work. You waste time on things that have no medical value. Talking, touching, providing comfort. These things do not heal injuries." Looked at her, don't they? When someone is in pain and afraid, their body goes into stress mode. Stress hormones flood their system, their immune response weakens, their healing slows. But when someone feels safe, when they know someone cares about their suffering, they're 3 days after the industrial accident, Ara summoned to her office. The chief physician's workspace was clean and organized, with large displays showing medical data from across the station. Ara stood at one display, studying a series of charts. "Dr. Brooks, please look at this data," she said without preamble. Approached the display. The charts showed recovery statistics from the accident victims, divided into two groups. His heart began to beat faster as he realized what he was seeing. "This group received standard treatment protocols," Ara explained, pointing to one set of data. "This group received treatment from you and your human colleagues." The difference was clear. Patients who had received human-style care showed faster healing rates, fewer complications, and significantly better psychological markers. Even their immune responses were stronger. "The human patients are obvious outliers," Ara continued. "Captain Mitchell's recovery is exceptional, but look here." She highlighted data from alien patients. "Even non-human patients who received your compassionate care protocols show improved outcomes." Studied the charts carefully. "What about the elder who refused pain medication?" Ara brought up another display. "His recovery rate exceeds our predictions by 18%. His stress markers are lower than other patients with similar injuries, and he has specifically requested that you continue to visit him during recovery." "He just needed someone to sit with him," said, "to acknowledge his pain and his strength in facing it." "That makes no logical sense," Ara said. "You provided no medical intervention, you simply talked to him." "Presence is an intervention," replied. "So is acknowledgement, so is compassion. They might not show up on your surgical tools, but they affect healing at a fundamental level." Ara turned away from the displays to face directly. "I do not understand how this works. Pain management should only affect pain levels, not overall healing. Yet your data shows systemic improvements across multiple biological functions." Took a breath. This was the conversation he had been hopping for since he arrived. "In human medicine, we learned something important centuries ago. The body and mind are connected in ways we're still discovering. When a patient feels safe, cared for, and free from unnecessary suffering, their entire system works better." He moved to the display and pulled up some of his research from Earth. "Look at these studies. Patients who have emotional support during recovery have stronger immune responses. Stress hormones like cortisol drop when patients feel safe. Even wound healing happens faster when pain is properly managed and patients aren't traumatized." Ara studied the data. "Your species has researched this extensively." "Because we had to," said. "Humans are fragile compared to many species. We needed to find every advantage we could in healing. And what we found was that compassion isn't just kindness, it's medicine." "You said earlier that compassion is humanity's greatest weapon," Ara recalled. "I did not understand what you meant." Nodded. "A weapon against suffering itself, against fear and trauma and pain. When you fight those things with compassion, everyone wins. The patient heals better. The doctor preserves their empathy and humanity. The whole system of care becomes stronger." Ara was quiet for a long moment. "I would like you to present this to the Galactic Health Consortium, a formal presentation with all your data and research." Felt a surge of excitement. "When?" "2 weeks. I will arrange for representatives from major medical institutions across the galaxy to attend. This is too important to keep within our station alone." Over the next 2 weeks, prepared the most important presentation of his life. He gathered every piece of research he could find, organized the recovery data from the station, and worked with Lisa and Sharon to document everything they had done. Greg Mitchell, now well enough to walk around, visited quarters one evening. "I heard you're giving a big presentation about treating patients like people. Good. These aliens need to hear it." "How are you feeling?" asked. "Great, actually. Better than I should be after getting torn up like that." Greg sat down, moving carefully but without obvious pain. "You know what I remember most? Right before the surgery, you promised I'd wake up and it would be over, and that's exactly what happened. I went to sleep scared and I woke up fixed. No memories of them cutting me open, no trauma, just healing. That's how it should be, said. Well, it's not how it is for most folks in this galaxy, Greg replied. You've got a chance to change that, don't waste it. The day of the presentation arrived. Stood in a large conference chamber filled with alien medical professionals from dozens of species. The Galactic Health Consortium representatives sat in the front rows. Ara introduced him, her words carefully neutral. Took a deep breath and began. He showed them videos from human hospitals, families visiting patients, doctors holding hands with frightened children, nurses singing to comfort the ill. The alien audience watched with obvious confusion. These behaviors made no sense to them. Then showed them the data, recovery times cut in half, infection rates dropping by 40%, psychological trauma reduced by 70%, patient satisfaction increasing dramatically, numbers they could not ignore. This is what happens when you treat pain and fear as enemies to be fought, not just symptoms to be acknowledged, explained. When you provide comfort, dignity, and compassion alongside medical treatment, healing improves across every measurable outcome. A council member raised a question. These results are from human patients and human hospitals. How do we know this applies to other species? Brought up the data from Zenith Station. These are the results from the accident 3 weeks ago. Patients from 6 different species, all treated with human compassionate care protocols. The improvements are consistent across species boundaries. He showed case studies. A child who healed faster with family present. A worker whose immune response strengthened when pain was managed, and whose surgical site healed with no complications after receiving emotional support. But why does this work? Another council member asked. What is the mechanism? We're still learning the complete mechanism, admitted. But we know that suffering causes stress. Stress weakens the immune system, slows healing, and creates trauma that can last for years. When you eliminate unnecessary suffering, the body can focus all its resources on healing instead of fighting fear and pain. A physician stood. You call pain unnecessary, but pain teaches us strength. Pain helps us endure hardship. Nodded respectfully. I met an elder named. He refused all pain medication because of that exact belief, and I respected his choice. But I didn't leave him alone to suffer. I sat with him. I talked with him. I helped him breathe through the worst moments. And he healed faster than your predictions said he would. Because of talking to him? The physician asked skeptically. Because he wasn't alone in his pain, explained. Because someone acknowledged his suffering and his strength. Because he felt seen and valued as a person, not just as a case to be processed. That made all the difference. He looked around the room, making eye contact with as many of the assembled doctors as he could. You have incredible medical technology. You can repair damage that would be permanent disabilities in human medicine. You can cure diseases we're still struggling with, but you're missing something fundamental. Played a video from an Earth hospital. A doctor sat beside a patient's bed, holding the patient's hand while explaining a difficult diagnosis. The patient cried, and the doctor simply stayed present, offering comfort without trying to fix the emotion. You're missing the understanding that every patient is a person with feelings, fears, and the need for dignity. That healing isn't just about fixing what's broken. It's about helping the whole person recover, body and mind together. He paused, letting his words sink in. You asked me earlier what humanity's greatest weapon is. It's not technology, it's not strength or endurance. It's the ability to look at suffering and say, this matters, you matter, let me help you. Brought up his final slide. Compassion is a weapon against suffering itself. When you fight pain with kindness, when you battle fear with presence, when you treat trauma with dignity, everyone wins. Everyone except the suffering. The room was silent. Could not read the expressions on most of the alien faces, but they were paying attention. That was something. Ara stood. Thank you, Dr. Brooks. We will now review this information and discuss implementation possibilities. The council members began talking among themselves. Stepped down from the presentation platform, his legs shaking slightly from nerves. Lisa met him at the edge of the room. You did great, she said quietly. Did I get through to them? Asked. I don't know, Lisa admitted. But you gave them something to think about. That's more than anyone else has managed. 2 hours later, the Galactic Health Consortium called and Ara back to the chamber. The council had reached a decision. Dr. Brooks, the head council member began, your presentation has raised important questions about our medical practices. While we are not prepared to overhaul thousands of years of medical tradition, we are willing to conduct a formal trial program. His heart leaped. The council member continued. Zenith Station will implement human compassionate care protocols across multiple wards for a period of 6 months. Results will be carefully monitored and compared to standard protocols. If the improvements continue to be significant, we will consider broader implementation across the consortium. Ara looked at, Dr. Brooks will lead the program implementation. I will oversee data collection and analysis. Thank you, said, trying to keep his voice steady. You won't regret this. We shall see, the council member replied. You have 6 months to prove that compassion is indeed medicine, not just sentiment. As they left the chamber, Ara walked beside. You should know, she said quietly, that I argued in favor of this trial. Your data is too compelling to ignore. Thank you for keeping an open mind, replied. I still do not fully understand how your methods work, Ara admitted. But I am a scientist. I cannot ignore evidence simply because it contradicts my assumptions. Smiled, that's all I can ask for, a chance to prove that there's a better way. That night sent a message back to Earth. He told them about the presentation, about the trial program, about the chance to change galactic medicine forever. As he finished the message, he looked out at the stars and thought about all the patients who would benefit if this worked. 6 months later, walked through the recovery ward and barely recognized it. The sterile silence had been replaced with quiet conversation. Families sat beside patient beds, holding hands and offering comfort. Alien doctors moved through the room with gentler expressions, speaking to patients instead of just at them. The transformation had not been easy. In the beginning, many doctors resisted the new protocols. They saw compassionate care as inefficient, emotional, and unnecessary. But the data kept coming in week after week, showing undeniable improvements. Faster healing, fewer complications, better outcomes across every metric they measured. Ara had become closest ally in implementing the changes. The chief physician studied the results with scientific rigor, documenting everything. She began to understand that compassion was not sentiment clouding medical judgment. It was a tool as important as any scanner or surgical instrument. Dr. Brooks, Ara called out from across the ward. She approached with a data tablet. The 6-month results are compiled. The consortium wants to see them tomorrow. Took the tablet and reviewed the summary. His hands trembled slightly as he read. Pain management protocols had reduced patient trauma by 78%. Recovery times had improved by an average of 43% across all species. Infection rates had dropped by 36%. Patient satisfaction scores had increased so dramatically that the measurement scale had to be adjusted. This is incredible, said. It is data, Ara replied, but there was warmth in her voice now. But I must admit, even I did not expect the improvements to be this significant. They walked together through the ward, checking on patients. In one bed, a young child recovered from surgery. Her mother sat beside her, singing a soft song. This would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. Family visits had been considered disruptive to healing. Now they were encouraged. In another bed, rested after a follow-up procedure. The technician had become one of the most vocal advocates for compassionate care among his species. When he saw, he waved. Dr. Brooks, I wanted to thank you again, In said. I am training to become a medical assistant. I want to help other patients the way you helped me. That's wonderful news, said genuinely. We need more people who understand that caring for patients means more than just fixing their injuries. In nodded enthusiastically. I tell everyone about how you explained everything to me during my treatment, how you stayed with me and made me feel less afraid. It changed how I thought about medicine completely. As continued his rounds, he passed a consultation room where Sharon was teaching a group of alien nurses about patient communication techniques. Her clear voice carried into the hallway as she explained how to recognize signs of fear and how to provide reassurance. Worked in another section of the ward, demonstrating proper pain assessment methods to a doctor. The doctor listened intently, asking thoughtful questions about how to balance cultural traditions with effective pain management. The change was spreading, but not everyone had accepted it. In the staff meeting later that day, a senior physician named Hose challenged the program. These results could be statistical anomalies. 6 months is not enough time to overturn thousands of years of medical practice. The statistical significance is clear, Ara replied calmly. We have treated over 3,000 patients during this trial. The pattern is consistent across species, injury types, and severity levels. But at what cost? Hose pressed. We spend twice as much time with each patient now. We have added family visitation areas, hired support staff for emotional care, and restructured our entire approach. This is not efficient. Spoke up. Efficiency is about outcomes, not just speed. If patients heal faster and have fewer complications, we actually save resources in the long run. Preventing trauma is more efficient than treating it later. Hose was not convinced, but he fell silent. Other doctors in the meeting nodded thoughtfully. The debate was not over, but it was shifting in favor of compassionate care. After the meeting, received an unexpected visitor. The elder who had refused pain medication during the accident came to see him. The old worker moved slowly but with dignity. Dr. Brooks, I have come to tell you something important, said. I spoke to my people's council about my experience here, about how you stayed with me during my recovery, even though I refused your medicine. I was honored to sit with you, said. You showed me that strength is not only about enduring pain alone, continued. It is also about accepting help, about allowing others to share your burden. I have convinced my council to reconsider our traditional views on medical suffering. Felt his eyes sting with emotion. That means more to me than you know. My people have always believed that pain teaches us endurance, explained. And that is true. But you taught me that compassion teaches us connection. Both have value. We were wrong to reject one in favor of the other. The next day, Ara presented the final trial results to the Galactic Health Consortium. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Word had spread about the program, and medical professionals from across the galaxy had come to see the results. Stood before them and presented the data methodically. He showed recovery rates, complication statistics, long-term health outcomes, and patient testimony. He played videos of transformed recovery wards, of families reunited with injured loved ones, of patients smiling instead of suffering. 6 months ago, I asked you to consider that compassion might be medicine, said. Today, I am not asking, I am showing you proof. Compassionate care improves every measurable outcome in patient recovery. This is not sentiment, this is science. A council member asked, what do you propose as next steps? Looked at Ara, who nodded for him to continue. We propose that the Galactic Health Consortium adopt compassionate care principles as recommended standards across all member worlds. We also propose the creation of a training institute where medical professionals can learn these techniques and adapt them for their own species. Another council member spoke. This would require significant changes to medical education, hospital design, and resource allocation. It would, agreed. But the return on that investment is healthier patients, more effective medicine, and medical professionals who remember why they chose to heal in the first place. Ara stood. If I may add to Dr. Brooks's proposal, 6 months ago I believed that our medical practices were as advanced as they could be. I was wrong. We had reached the limits of technology, but we had not yet discovered the full potential of care itself. Humanity has shown us that missing piece. She brought up a final chart. This shows the psychological health of medical staff before and after implementing compassionate care protocols. Our doctors and nurses report higher job satisfaction, lower burnout rates, and greater sense of purpose. Compassionate care does not just help patients, it helps us remember why we became healers. The council deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the head council member's expression was unreadable. The Galactic Health Consortium has reviewed your proposal and supporting evidence, she began. We acknowledge that the results of this trial program are significant and compelling. Held his breath. Therefore, we are officially adopting compassionate care principles as recommended medical standards for all member institutions. We are also approving the creation of the Brooksara Institute for Compassionate Medicine, which will provide training and resources to medical professionals across the galaxy. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some voices were excited, others skeptical, but change was coming whether they were ready or not. felt Aura's hand on his shoulder. The physician looked at him with something that might have been pride. "We did it," she said simply. "We did," agreed, "but this is just the beginning." Over the following months, the institute took shape. Medical professionals from dozens of species came to Zenith Station to learn, and his team taught them about pain management, emotional support, patient communication, and the importance of treating the whole person rather than just the injury. Some lessons were simple, teaching doctors to explain procedures in language patients could understand, showing nurses how to recognize signs of fear, demonstrating the power of simply sitting with someone who is suffering. Other lessons were more complex, adapting pain management protocols for different species' physiologies, balancing cultural traditions with effective care, creating support systems that worked across vastly different social structures. Greg Mitchell returned to Zenith Station, this time with a proposal. "I want to fund scholarships for medical students from developing worlds to study at your institute. Species that can't afford advanced medical training should still be able to learn compassionate care." Shook his hand warmly. "That's incredibly generous." "You saved my life and my sanity," Greg replied. "This is the least I can do." A year after the trial program began, received a message from Earth. More human medical professionals were being recruited for exchange programs across the galaxy. Humanity's reputation was changing. They were no longer seen as just primitives from a harsh world. They were recognized as teachers of something the galaxy desperately needed. Stood in the newly dedicated Bruxara Institute, watching students from a dozen different species practice patient communication techniques. A student carefully explained a procedure to a simulated patient. A student held the hand of another student role-playing as someone in pain. And student asked gentle questions, learning to see beyond the injury to the person. Aura joined him. "I have been thinking about what you said when you first arrived, about humanity's greatest weapon being compassion." "What about it?" asked. "I understand now," Aura said. "It is a weapon because it fights against something that affects every species in the galaxy. Suffering, fear, loneliness and pain, these are universal enemies, and compassion is the universal answer." Nodded, "Every being that can feel pain deserves to have that pain acknowledged and treated. Every person who is afraid deserves comfort. Every patient deserves dignity. Those aren't human values, they're universal ones. We just remembered them when others forgot." A young student approached them nervously. "Dr. Brooks, Dr. Aura, I have a question about the case study we reviewed today." "Of course," said warmly. "What would you like to know?" As he answered the student's question, thought about how far they had come. A year ago, most doctors in this station would have dismissed compassionate care as inefficient emotion. Now, students from across the galaxy came here to learn that caring for a patient's suffering was just as important as repairing their body. The change was spreading. Reports came in from hospitals across the consortium territory. Recovery wards were being redesigned. Pain management protocols were being updated. Medical schools were adding compassionate care to their curricula. The revolution was quiet but undeniable. That evening sent another message to Earth. He told them about the Institute, about the students learning to heal with both skill and compassion, about the galaxy slowly transforming its understanding of medicine. He ended the message with a thought that had been growing in his mind for months. "We came to the stars thinking we would learn from more advanced species, and we did learn about their technology, their history, their achievements. But we also taught them something they had lost or never knew. We taught them that strength includes gentleness, that efficiency includes empathy, and that the highest calling of a healer is not just to cure but to care." Looked out at the stars, thinking about all the patients across the galaxy who would benefit from this change. Beings who would recover in comfort instead of agony. Children who would heal surrounded by family instead of alone. Doctors who would remember that every patient was a person deserving of dignity. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was not advanced technology. It was the simple, revolutionary idea that suffering matters and that compassion is powerful enough to change everything. He smiled, thinking about how strange it was that the greatest weapon humanity brought to the stars was the willingness to sit with someone in pain and say, "You are not alone. Let me help you." In a galaxy full of wonders, that might have been the most wonderful thing of all. Compassion as medicine. It was time to prove it to the galaxy body can focus on healing instead of fighting fear. That is psychological, not medical. The mind and body aren't separate, said. That's something human medicine learned a long time ago. When you heal the whole person, not just their injury, recovery happens faster and more completely. Ara was quiet for a long moment. I would like to see your data on this, all of it. Smiled, I'll send it to you tonight. As Ara walked away, allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he was getting through to them. Ward, their hearts pounding, this was it, a real crisis, a chance to prove that human medicine had something valuable to offer. As they reached the ward, injured workers were already being brought in on stretchers. The scale of the disaster became clear quickly. Dozens of casualties, maybe more, injuries ranging from minor to critical. Grabbed a medical kit and headed for the nearest patient. The real test was about to begin. Tomorrow he would begin, not with grand speeches or demands for change, but with observation, with patience, and with the quiet demonstration of a different way. A human way. Closed his eyes and tried to sleep, knowing that the real work was just beginning.